It's got a very sharp edge, kind of slanted, and these are just the cheapo brushes you buy from Hobby Lobby or wherever you are. But we're going to start with that sky and see if we can't nail the sky. So the sun is kind of setting right here, so we're going to leave this spot white, but the rest of it we're going to start to pre-shade or pre-wet everything. I'm using Winsor Newton watercolors, maybe a tad bit of purple in there, or a tad bit of red, I guess. Cool, yeah, that's looking good. Okay. And it's going to be darker up top of the sky, and it's going to slowly fade down to lighter blues. And so if you want more intense colors, use less water on your brush and more color, and that'll get you some really nice color up there. And since it's wet, the paint's going to go wherever it's wet, and it's okay to let it kind of do its own thing and blotch it in there. Especially for like clouds, if you want to create the illusion of clouds, letting colors blend together can be really nice, because we have some like little purple clouds down here, so we're come and do that, and then it kind of gets orange as we go down too. But we're gonna try to work in some of this lighter blue. Looks like we'll have some purple or some yellow, almost kind of like yellowish orange, like a sunset, so we'll mix a little bit yellow and orange. Yeah, that's looking good. Pretty saturated on my colors, you know. And just adding some of that yellow to the base of those purples can kind of make it look like the sun's hitting the bottom of the cloud. And so as you can imagine, the sun's right here, and it's basically filling up this whole spot and then hitting the bottom of those purple clouds, and then kind of fading up from there. And I'm just working sideways with basically the edge of my brush, kind of working in there. And I'm not being super exact with this reference or anything like that. And if you want to reverse some of the stuff you've done and like pull out more while your paper's still wet, you can take a paper towel and just kind of blotch in little white spots. Cool, and that's a relatively simple way to get some pretty cool sunset effects. We're going to bring some more yellow or reddish down in here, right at the tip of those mountains. Coming back up, adding in more of that red. Sunsets have tons of color, so feel free to just dink around with that. I'm using basically strictly red, and just coming back through on those wet spots and just kind of adding into that. You know, trying to get similar brush strokes and just bring it right up to that mountain line. Okay, now let's go into our lake, which is beautiful. This is going to be similar color to the sky. Well, let's wet it down first though. So we're going to build up our color in there we're going to do the wet on wet technique, which means you're laying water down on your paper first and then working with color. I know I kind of did that backwards with that purple, but just ever so slightly. And that way we can build up the smoothness. If you're using brush strokes where you like load up your brush with color and then put it onto dry paper, you're going to get a lot of texture, which can look great. But for like water and stuff, you want typically smooth and blended, which can be a little bit better. And we'll come through and just start adding that color in, leaving some spots. You don't want it to be a solid brick of purple. You want to kind of have different blues and oranges in there to mimic the sky that you've laid down. Leaving some spots for white as well can be great. Just trying to mimic that sky. It doesn't have to be exact, but enough to say, hey, this is a lake, you know. It looks like we've got some stuff like that coming in. Maybe some purple. Trying to just observe a little bit more. Water can be a little bit more nuanced than the sky can sometimes. But trying to work your brush strokes the same way. So going that direction, like left to right, right to left, is better than doing a bunch of different brush strokes, if that makes sense. So I kind of blocked out where I want the snow to appear on these. So don't paint over that with color. Leave those white for now. We are going to come through and kind of just fill in this mountain range with some blue. Using the canvas on here is going to be dry. I don't want my colors bleeding everywhere. And this can be a little bit more textured because you've got more like rock stuff back there that is more inherently textured than like water or sky. So you want it to be a little bit more rugged. So using a dry brush and a dry surface with just a little bit of color can create some of that separation. So we're going to try to make a little bit of gray. So bring in some white. Never use white to lighten color. You use it to dull color. And then a tiny, tiny bit of brown. So brown and blue make gray if you don't have a gray on your palette. I'm just using the edge of the brush to bring in some of that texture. Using very little water drying off my brush. Trying to get those bristles to really catch the paper. I'm just laying down light color. We can always come back and do stuff differently. That's looking pretty good though. Maybe we'll come back through with a little bit of blue, kind of darken up, maybe a little bit more gray actually. So brown with blue again. We're going to start trying to work in some of that shadow into these mountains. Cool. And now these forward mountains in front of us are going to be much more contrasting than those background mountains. And it's going to be lots of green, but we're trying to make like a foresty green. So I've kind of mixed it in with my yellows. And that kind of tones down the greens. And then I'm going to mix a little bit of brown in there to really make it more foresty and darker. I love using browns. It can really just tone down stuff. Cool. We're going to start, the coastline is going to be a lot more dark. Once again, I'm using a dry brush on a dry canvas, or a drier brush, I guess I should say. Just working in that coastline. Same on this side, trying to define it. Basically, I'm just kind of tapping in little patterns. You don't want it to be like a solid line, because that just doesn't look natural, right? And this stuff up in front will definitely be the most saturated. So let's lay down, we're going to use a lot more water. And just kind of block in, making sure we're not missing any white spaces on our paper. Just blocking this in, because we can always come back with a darker color and really redefine that stuff. You know, so we don't want to go too dark. We're trying to define just like the mid-tone of this area, I think. Yeah, cool. We can come back through and really build that up. But the stuff in the foreground will be the most contrasting and dark, vibrant colors than the stuff in the background. As it goes back, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. Working from light to dark. Just building up those tones. Kind of like reverse engineering when you do watercolor. You kind of have to reverse the process of how you build up tones. Because like I said, you can't reverse stuff once it's on the paper. It's a lot harder to go dark to light as it is light to dark. So you gotta work in passes, and if you need to take a break, come back to it, that's totally fine. It's better to not get frustrated and take breaks and then come back to it than it is to try to force yourself into being creative and getting it done. Like I said, the stuff up here is going to be the darkest, but it's not one solid shade of dark green. It is multiple shades of different greens, which gives it the contrast look. Yeah, it's looking good. And come back through, add some more detail to that shoreline. Working in passes, patience is key with this stuff. Don't rush it, don't force it. Take breaks when needed. just going to come through and start building up those rocks in there with a darker, almost grayish brown, keeping our strokes going the same way, kind of pulling down the mountain, down and up, working with more color, less water on our brush. I love how that sky turned out. I thought it turned out great. Which we'll have to come back through now, and we're going to start working on this mountain back here. These are going to be very blue, very bluish gray. And we're going to come back through and just start defining some of these peaks. Just really working in that color, so using very, very little color on, very little water. And just kind of picturing where this stuff will hit. And that's why we left those white spaces before. So you can really come through and define this, all these white spots. And so that's why we work in passes of light to dark, because we can come back through and do all this amazing detail work. But if we had started so dark, there was going to be no way we could come back through and really affect that. Yeah, so far that's looking really good. Gonna clean off our brush, get all that water off, just a very damp brush, and try to fade some of this stuff again while it's still wet. Just trying to pull that color around a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Sweet. Now our front layer should be a little bit more dry. So we're going to come back through with some more greens and blues. And really just work on the texture. This will be a lot more textured than our mountainous backdrop. I'm just going to start pulling in some grass. Very, very thin strokes. I'm not trying to do massive, just trying to pull it in. Adding in little tufts of grass just so this ridgeline isn't all the same. And we may end up just adding a big old plant in here. So bringing in some of that brown. Cool, that's looking pretty good. So for this water, while that's drying, we're gonna come through and kind of work on this water. So we need to add in some reflection. So I'm gonna use a lot of water on my brush, and we're just gonna kind of pull some stuff into that water. And just, basically what we're trying to do is just kind of pull it downwards on the paper. So we're trying to get some color set on there. We're just gonna kind of blend it in down like that. I'm just trying to bring that mountain into the water. A little bit broader wash. And it's very light. I'm using a lot of water on my brush. That was a little too much color. I'm just trying to give that general shape of the mountains in there, because they will reflect into that pool of water. And basically from here on out, it's just touching up whatever you feel is necessary. So we will pull off the tape here soon and be done with it. But first, we're going to dry our paper. And then come back through with some white pen and finish things up. So I'll be right back once this is dry. Okay, we're on the final steps. This is I guess the more pen and wash part of this whole process, but we're just gonna take this white pen, it's like a gel pen, and we can start adding in some reflections into the water, and then we'll also take some black pen and just kind of mess around and see what happens. Yeah, it just livens up that water a little bit. I can even do some stuff up in here, just to bring in some more detail so it's not all darkness. Okay, now we're gonna come back through with our Pentalic pens. That's the ones I use. I love these things. They're pretty affordable too. And we're just gonna start coming through and defining some of these lines. Might actually use a bigger one. Yeah, so we'll use a thicker tipped one. I don't know if you can see that. A little bit easier. Be warned though, these things are pretty bold. Cool, and I think that's gonna wrap this up. And we're gonna call that good. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.